This is an example of Spring doing dependency injection, with the first approach to be XML configuration and the other approach is annotation configuration. So we were tasked to basically create an implementation of the coach interface, right? That is dependent on it needs a dependency injection from schedule service, okay? So for the tennis coach, we were required to use a constructor injection. And as you can see, we basically pass it in the tennis coach constructor, right? And we have to define that in the XML configuration, which is here, this one. And as you can see, we define the bean ID for the specific schedule service implementation and also the specific implementation of the coach that requires that dependency injection. For the next case, we do have the setter injection, which is using the golf coach. And as you can see, we have an empty default constructor. And now we inject it through a setter method, right? To basically update and basically have that dependency injection. But now if you check the application context.xml, and you would now use the property and define the interface and basically reference to the specific implementation of a service, right? And if we run this, we should basically get a random schedule from an array. We have five different strings there, which is the schedule, maybe on Monday to Friday, and it will basically grab that. Okay, and the beauty of it is when we go to our main, we have to basically load the XML file, and now instead of creating a new specific implementation of a schedule service, right? We can just first get the specific implementation of a coach. Then we can just call the method from the injected schedule service, right? To that get daily workout schedule. And it will know that it will get from an implementation, which is a random schedule service. Okay. Now we move on to the annotation configuration. In the annotation configuration, we first would define in our XML file that we would do that, and instead of defining each of our beans, I commented it out, I would do a component scan, right? And now I would still do the same thing, right? This is a constructor injection, and now I should have the add component, right? For the golf coach, it will still be the same. I would do a setter and then add component. Okay, and we did not show a field injection for XML because I don't think there's one. But if we're now using the annotation way, we can basically do the auto-wired, right? Which, hold on, let's see if I have it here. Here, yep, at auto-wired with a field, right? It's a field injection, and actually this can be removed already. Okay, and now if we hit run, we should get the same, and it's listening to another port. So we hit run again, and you can see we can still get those random strings in an array, right? The next thing that we wanted was to basically have an application.properties where we can define values, basically to have values on the data members of a implemented class, right? So for this, let's try with a tennis coach, and what we need to do is basically do an add value annotation, right? And basically have this format with the $ and curly braces to map the application.properties, and the ID is just showing the value right away. Okay, and that should give us the information if we do the get coach info, right? So the next thing that we have to do is now to make it a prototype scope, right? And let's see if we already run this, right? So tennis coach, we can now show the value of those data members for that one, okay, with the get coach info. And because we are now going to test for the if it's a singleton or not, which we want it to not be a singleton, right? So we check if it's the same memory location. Answer is false. We do check the memory location of each coach object, and as you can see, they have a different memory address. That's it. Thank you very much. One last thing, that we do have to have this property placeholder in our XML file so that Spring would know that we'll use the at value and pull it from the application.properties.